Hello and welcome to another standard video. Today I'm trying out the robots deck once again, although now on the ranked ladder compared to the blue-red version that I tried in the preview event. So hopefully we'll get a much more competitive meta now to see if the deck is actually good enough. So some of the build-around cards include a Ravenous Robots, which makes a 1/1 robot token whenever we cast an artifact spell, and then at 3 mana there's Pinnacle Emissary, making a drone token with flying that can only block creatures with flying, although the Emissary can also be warped for 1 mana, which is especially useful if we also have a Springleaf Drum, since the drum allows us to tap an untapped creature to make a mana of any color, so we can even warp an Emissary, tap the Emissary itself to still cast additional spells afterwards, making some drone tokens in the process. Ideally we also have a robots in play, so that's how we can very quickly generate an army of 1/1 artifact tokens, which in turn can set up some of our payoff cards, such as a new improvised arsenal, kind of a cranial plating, 2 to play, 1 to equip, giving 1 additional power for each artifact we control, and it can even make additional copies of itself for 5 mana if we don't have anything else going on, so this can be a great finisher, especially when paired with our evasive creatures, such as the tokens from Emissary, or perhaps even a 1 mana Memory Guardian, as it has affinity for artifacts, so it gets a 1 mana discount for each artifact we control, and then a 3/4 flyer for a single blue is quite a bargain. And then we also have Krang Mastermind, which we can hopefully cast for just double blue, and then if we cast it while empty-handed, when it enters we get to draw 4 cards, so a great way to refuel to keep the cards flowing, and this also gets better the more artifacts we control, as it gets additional power that way, similar to the improvised arsenal. And then the White Splash is mostly for our removal spells. Glass Casket, exiling any opposing creature with mana value 3 or less, gets the nod over some of the red options, like maybe an Extruder dealing 2 damage or a Chainsaw dealing 3 damage, and the main reason is because of the popularity of some of the Aura decks, especially in Best of 1, being able to deal with a creature enchanted by, let's say, Ethereal Armor, often means that 2 or 3 damage may not be enough, so then Glass Casket is a much cleaner answer. Same with a Dusk Rose Reliquary, which does require us to sacrifice an artifact as an additional cost, but can then exile any opposing creature or even artifact, so it could also get rid of a monument out of the Lessons deck, for instance, and also has built-in Ward 2, so harder for the opponents to get rid of afterwards. And of course both are also very important against the various Badger Mole Cub decks, where we can exile a Badger Mole with a Casket, maybe even an Uroboroid with a Dusk Rose Reliquary. So those are also very important, and that's once again where just dealing 2 or 3 damage may not be good enough. And then rounding out the deck, I'm going with 4 copies of Clockwork Percussionist as another cheap creature that can enable our token makers and affinity cards, and it's also a card we don't mind sacrificing to the Dusk Rose Reliquary, as we're still going to get an extra card in return, so it doesn't feel bad sacrificing it. And then it's still a hasty creature that we can suit up with an arsenal in the more controlling matchups, and then it can still represent a lot of damage out of nowhere. I also tried Gingerbrute and the blue 1-drop that can become unblockable, but overall I like the Percussionist a little bit better. And then we also have 2 copies of Soul Guide Lantern, which is very important against some of the Kevero Reanimator decks, but even against Badger Mole decks we can maybe exile a Nature's Rhythm before the opponent can harmonize it, and then later we can also still sacrifice it to draw a card, while it's also a fine enabler early on to set up our affinity cards and maybe make a few extra tokens. And then at the mana base is all dual lands. No basics means we are vulnerable to Demolition Field effects. Hopefully our opponents are not going to check. But of course we do need a lot of dual lands if we want to cast some of our colored spells early, especially if we also want to then play Krang for double blue at some point, so then we cannot afford to have many basic lands in the mana base. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump in some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play. We have a keepable hand, assuming the Ravenous Robots can stick around for a turn or 2. If not, then our hand's going to be pretty slow to get going. Still need a second blue source to eventually cast Krang, but at least we have some interaction here. Turn 1 Forests into Llanowar Elves. Gonna let them keep that one to develop the Ravenous Robots, and then if they play turn 2 Badger Mole, we can maybe get rid of it. Looks like the Landfall deck. So cards like the I Still Explore, we can maybe exile with a Reliquary. And Badger Mole goes in the casket. Emissary's not bad either. So this turn could warp Emissary plus play Caskets. Sure. And then we're just waiting for another blue source to play Krang. Plenty of tokens we can sack to the Reliquary. Passage will still be tapped. Okay. Found our blue source. So can go Percussionist into a 2-mana Krang. Probably still hang on to the Reliquary, although we could run everything out here just to draw 4. It is tempting. Or I can still use this to set up with Emissary, play this plus Percussionists. And then next turn they might play an Ice Still, which I can exile, and then play Krang. Yeah, let's try that instead. Because the ground is probably going to get stalled relatively soon, so then having the additional flyers could be useful, especially if we draw our equipment at some point. For now, these can attack. So expecting an Ice Still. Yep. Can get back Fabled Passage twice. And goes for a Basing Se. Into Chocobo, and then play Fabled Passage. So as we suspected, the ground is getting pretty clogged up. Of course, could have had a Krang in play, which also threatens a lot of damage. Alright, so first off, a Reliquary. Can sack the Percussionists. Find a Springleaf, which is perfect. So I can still play Guardian and then Krang to draw the full 4. And we can tap a Summoning Sick Drone. Well, this was quite the curve out. Still haven't played land yet, so I can still Reliquary if I'd like to exile the Chocobo. Sure, at this point, I don't see how we really lose. And yeah, opponent's given up. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a decent hand. Got some interaction, some cheap artifacts to make some tokens. Facing turn 1 plains and Momo, so this is the Momo White deck. Okay, I don't think I'm casting anything turn 1. Wanna save my 1-mana artifacts to trigger the Emissary. Maybe next turn we can casket Momo. Could also be Mono White Angels, I suppose. And Jada is probably the scarier of the two. And Authority, actually pretty decent against us, since we're going to make a lot of tokens. But for now, put Jada in a casket. Maybe next turn we can warp Emissary, play a couple 1-drops, or maybe casket again. Seam Rip, I'm gonna get Jada back. Cannot exile enchantments with our Reliquary or Casket. And the opponent also has a Valkyrie to follow up. So we are starting to fall behind a bit. I think Jada is still the bigger concern for now. So we could warp Emissary, Casket again. And then at least I'll have an artifact I don't mind sacking to the Reliquary. And another authority, okay. This turn, I guess Emissary, a Reliquary or Momo is an option, although they could easily have another Momo in hand. So, despite them being stuck on 2 lanes, I'm hesitant to get rid of Momo right now. So then maybe Casket the Valkyrie, and maybe play Percussionists, play a tap land. Sure. I guess I should have sequenced my lanes differently. I'll just play a Lantern then. And then there's a chance I can hold off Momo. Don't feel the need to attack for one. Once we start attacking, we're gonna deal a lot of damage at once. Opponent offering the trades. Are there any flash flyers that they can play? Not too many that I can think of. So this probably implies that they just have another Momo. Which, yeah, confirms my suspicions. Okay, so now Emissary, Percussionists, and then I could still Reliquary if I'd like to get rid of Momo. Although then we will be out of answers for larger angels that might show up. I think it's still reasonable. Sack Percussionist, and then we'll be able to still play the card we exiled next turn. Alright, so what we really want now is to draw our equipment, or Krang, to kind of go over the top. Inquisitor or empty-handed. So maybe draw first with Lantern. Opponent's got a lot of life to spare, so they have a lot of time to maybe draw out of it. But yeah, they've been stuck on 2 lanes so far. Don't want to trade 3 damage for 2 damage. Opponent had it sheltered by ghosts. Exiles Guardian. I'll take the trade if they attack. And we found another Reliquary. So I can pay the war to get my Guardian back, I suppose. Sure. Sacking a token. And we'll hit for 5. Should play my land out in case we draw Krang. Opponent finally hits a 3rd land for another Jada. Percussionist. So yeah, we don't have the best of attacks right now. Can still double or triple block Jada. So now they could cast a 5-mana Angel if they have one. And other are sheltered by ghosts. Exiles Emissary. And yeah, we can trade. So not sure if that was something they expected. Another Emissary. It's gonna trigger Authority a bunch more. But I think it's still worth casting here. Again, our equipment would be awesome. Since that can deal a ton of damage, we can even make extra copies. Krang to draw 4. Those are the cards we want. Another Seam Rip. Goes for Casket to get Jada back. And draw another Reliquary. Sure. Sack Percussionists. And draw another one. It's 1 step forward, 2 steps back in terms of hitting the opponent's life total. But yeah, if they just draw lands, we can attack freely. Opponent did draw another Valkyrie. Springleaf Drum, not particularly exciting. I think I'm okay attacking with Percussionist still. I could attack all out actually. We lose 1 token, but we get 6 additional damage in. Question is whether I cast a Springleaf here. Opponent would gain 4 life. I don't think it's necessarily worth it. Might be able to close out the game next turn. Alright, another Sheltered by Ghosts. Does that change the race? Can still attack with my 3-powered creatures. If I attack all out, they block a 1/1. They're at 13, take 5, 6, 12. So we're 1 damage off. But our opponent's gonna scoop it up regardless, I'll take it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. This hand is not perfect, missing some interaction. We do have 1 token maker, multiple percussionists, although cannot play 1 on turn 1, so would have to start with a Lantern. I think I can still try it. But yeah, definitely need to draw well off the top. At least we have a tool against a graveyard combo deck. Although opponent on a blue deck instead. Casket could be useful, depending on what our opponent is playing. For now, I think it's fine to get the Lantern down. An argument to keep it is it maybe triggers the robots. We may only have the 1 red source, so I cannot go robots plus percussionist in the same turn. But our opponent's actually on Reanimator, so Lantern's actually pretty important. Although there are ways for the opponent to get rid of it before they're ready to combo off. Discards a land for now. So I could play the Ravenous Robots. I think I actually go for a Glass Casket first, so they don't have this free discard outlet. And then we'll see what they want to do. Next turn I can go Robots plus Percussionist. Awaken the Honored Dead could be a way for them to blow up a Lantern. They might have Wistfulness. The graveyard is getting pretty full. They did get Speaker, which can maybe get a Kivero or a Wistfulness. But we're finally getting on the board. If we knew for a fact we were up against a graveyard deck, I probably would have waited a little bit longer on playing the Lantern. So I could have at least exiled something relevant. Now they're going to force the issue. So our opponent's got to restart. But next turn they do get to mill 3. Speaker can maybe discard a Bringer of the Last Gift. But Arsenal was a great draw, since that can apply a bunch more pressure without necessarily overextending with more creatures, in case they can discard or mill a Bringer and then use Kivero. So Arsenal equip. Question is whether I add Percussionist or Memory Guardian to the board. Kind of liking Percussionist here. Although next turn we do know that they can play a ground blocker, so maybe having the flyer that we can equip is still worth it. For now, equip Percussionists. Opponent falls to 7. So if they don't mill the perfect cards, they could be in trouble. No Bringer, so that's the scariest that they could have milled. So now they're getting hit from a lot of different angles. Town Greeter can jump an equipped creature on the ground. But that's where we can maybe move it onto the Guardian. Unless they have a Wistfulness left to blow up an artifact. And yeah, our opponent scoops it up, so yeah, Soul Guide Lantern did just enough here to give us the edge. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. This hand is missing a red mana to cast the Ravenous Robots. And then even if we do, there's not a whole lot going on here. So this one feels kind of weak unless we happen to be up against a graveyard deck. But even then we still need some early pressure to back up our graveyard hate. This is just a better version of our previous hand. Although one card has to go. I think it's the Glass Casket. Keep the artifacts that we can cast to set up Krang. I mean, I could cast a Casket through Springleaf, admittedly. So there is a world where it's maybe better than a Percussionist. So turn 1 Springleaf, turn 2 Warp, maybe play Casket. Yeah, you know what, let's try this. Opponent on turn 1 Elves. It's not mono-green landfall if they're playing Multiversal Passage. So this turn, Springleaf. And then we can casket a Badger Mole Cub if it shows up. A Leyline Weaver. Still a worthy candidate. Possible they can counter the trigger here with a Spider Sense. Although they would have to pick up the Llanowar Elves for that. Alright, opponent goes for it. Fine by me. We still get to keep our artifacts. Can always sack the Glass Casket to cast a Reliquary if needed. There's a Badger Mole now. And a Quantum Riddler to draw. Untaps Weaver, still makes 2 mana now. So yeah, opponent's going off. And ooh, Reclamation Sage. At least it's just a one-off. Unless they maybe copy it with Mockingbird. But that card's very mean against us specifically. So I can Reliquary, but that would be my entire turn. I think I still have to go for it here. Because otherwise we're just going to get buried by their mana advantage. We'll eventually find a way around a Quantum Riddler, but for now, hit for 1, I guess. Would have liked to play Emissary first, but yeah, they dealt with our Springleaf Drum, which could have let us double spell. A Rhythm for 2, gets another Cub, and then it's not going to take long for them to harmonize it back. If they have Craterhoof in the deck, they can probably cast it next turn, yep. Alright, Soul Guide Lantern to the rescue, perhaps. They can still play Quantum Riddler, but at least they don't have an easy win if they're running Craterhoof. And then next turn Krang to refuel, so still have a little bit of hope. Opponent found Botanical Sanctum. I guess they didn't have double blue yet to cast Quantum Riddler, so yeah, next turn they will. Steam Vents to shock or not to shock. I'm pretty likely to draw another 2 mana play, so I think I do shock myself here. Alright, so double Springleaf, can empty my hand if I'd like. Exile your Badger Mole. Or we could deal with the Leyline Weaver if we think that's more threatening. It's gotta be Badger Mole, right? They do get to untap the Weaver with the Riddler, but at least they don't have 1,000,000 mana. And then sack. Maybe it's the Percussionist, actually, so I guess I could have tapped that instead. I don't think it matters too much. Just to dig a card deeper. Exile the Cub. Can attack with my Flyers because of Weaver. Emissary could maybe get busy. They can trade for a Rex Sage and a 1/1. I guess we wait. And then Lantern can still be sacrificed next turn. Hoping to find our equipment. I'll take another Krang. Ooh, Nature's Rhythm for 2 gets another Cub, but I can at least exile Nature's Rhythm before they harmonize it with a Lantern. Because there is a trigger going on the stack here before they can harmonize it back. And I think I should. Although, as it stands, I think our opponent's kind of ahead still. Because they get to cast a Quantum Riddler, draw 2. And it's not going to take them long to find more action. Breeding Pool untapped is bad news. And Mockingbird for 4. Could copy Reclamation Sage, can copy Quantum Riddler to draw 2 once again. Alright, so we'll see what happens next turn. Glass Casket, the Cub. So that's the third copy dealt with. Krang can attack. And then the Flyers can technically trade for Quantum Riddler. If I get aggressive, what happens? Opponent could maybe Ouroboros, get some counters, then the Flyers hit for 10. I can block a whole lot on the ground. So then I'm probably dead. Let's say they don't Ouroboros me. Then attacking all out gets me 6 damage in, or 5 damage in the air. They fall to 9, they probably chump Krang. Yeah, that's not necessarily a race we're winning. Our Rex Sage chumps, at least means they can't copy it with Mockingbird, for what it's worth. Alright, let's see for that. Unbalancing, say, Earthbends. And we get to untap. Alright, so Krang could attack now. Still leaving my Flyers back. Possible they have a bunch of lanes in hand. Opponent accepts the trade. We're hoping for another copy of Krang, pretty much. Because if our opponent can empty their hand, the Riddlers can maybe draw a few more. So advantage definitely towards our opponent here. Just attacking with a 3/3. We'll take it. And that's another lane. Yeah, I can't afford to brick here. Still not really in a position to attack. Opponent can block 3 tokens. Possible playing the land is still correct in case we top deck Krang. River Regents to draw and discard. Time for Ouroboros, perhaps. Yep. So expecting an all-out attack. And I may not be surviving it. Opponent able to empty their hands. This is very conservative. They might be worried about an Anthem effect on our tokens, but sadly don't have Chrome Dome. So yeah, take 4, and then most likely die next turn. Well, Krang still gives us a little bit of hope, but still probably too late. Emissary and Memory Guardian, so I can just cast it. But the problem is these 1/1 tokens do not block ground creatures. And that's how we're gonna die next turn. Alright. Well, we still made a game out of it, answered 3 Badger Moles, exiled multiple Nature's Rhythms with our lanterns as well. And there's Badger Mole number 4. Yeah, just didn't have our equipment to really punch past these Quantum Riddlers. That could have made the difference. And that'll do it. GG's, I don't think we need to do the math for blockers. Yeah, we're super dead. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have white and red. Still missing a shock land, but I can cast most of my spells, and once we do find a shock land, we'll have double blue for Krang. So I think we can try this. And then no point in warping right now. Okay, opponent on mono white auras, so definitely a matchup where it's good to have some removal options. For now, I could casket the Scavenger already. It is tempting. I think I should still go for robots first, although if they have a seam rip, I might regret it. If they sheltered by ghosts, I wouldn't be able to casket yet. So maybe I should just casket first, and then next turn I can warp, play robots or robots and warp to make some creatures. And then Reliquary can be another answer. Okay, it is black-white skeletons instead. Still a pretty similar deck to the mono-white enchantment deck. So then would we rather get an extra flying token or an extra 1/1 on the ground? Probably the 1/1 on the ground in this matchup. Either way, there's a good chance they'll end up getting sacked to the Reliquary. No removal this turn is good to see. The 1/1 holding off the Scavenger. Memory Guardian's nice too. So I could first cast Emissary to make more tokens, or this turn just go Memory Guardian plus Reliquary, maybe exiling the Miner. Or we can get rid of the token for good. Next turn is where they get a +1 counter. Yeah, either way I think Guardian... Miner could get an extra power if they have the 3-mana enchantment, so maybe we'll start there. And then I can still attack with a 1/1. We have a 1/1 on defense. So this is Corpses of the Lost. A 3/4. Can still hold off the skeleton at least. So that's fine by me. Another Krang's a bit of an awkward draw, but we'll make it work. So Reliquary, the Spider, and then play Krang. Not bad. Don't mind trading for Scavenger now. Which will get double strike until end of turn. But the opponent's just too far behind. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. Missing a shock land, so currently missing red. Only have white mana. So I don't think this is gonna work. Otherwise, with the right mana, this hand would have been pretty decent with 2 token makers and Arsenal to kind of go over the top. But as it stands, I'll take my mulligan. Okay, we can try this. And then 1 Springleaf can go. Percussionist pairs with a Reliquary. And can start with a Springleaf Drum. So next turn we immediately trigger the Ravenous Robots. We've got removal. Starting town Mountain. So not exactly sure what to make of this. Could be control. We're just gonna warp an emissary. Could be the Rakdos discard deck, I suppose. But then I would have expected them to do something first, and yeah. Combustion technique points towards lessons, actually. But we got an extra token regardless. So the problem here is that our opponent is not going to present many targets for our removal spells. So then, yeah, it's kind of a waiting game. They might be able to deal with all our tokens if they have a Arrows demonstration. Alright, there's a Monument. At least Monument I can exile with a Reliquary. So, first we'll attack. And then I'll sack the Percussionist to the Reliquary. And then I'm going to be a little bit short of playing Krang, but next turn I can. I suppose had I kept a token back, I could have still cast it here. Opponent's got another Monument. Glass Casket only exiles creatures. Could still run it out just to get a bigger discount, but eventually our opponent might play a Gran or an Otter token we can exile, so I'm gonna hang on to it for now. And then Improvised Arsenal's great. Opponent goes digging. So yeah, they can deal with all our creatures. The Arsenal threatens a lot of damage. Opponent did have a Gran as it turns out. It is enabled, so they get a 1 mana discount. So could still see a flurry of interaction. Monument makes a treasure. They found a land. And now Stormchaser's Talent, so I will be able to use both caskets after all. So I think this is Warp Emissary. Maybe even 2. Although I wouldn't be able to warp both, cast 2 caskets and equip the Arsenal. So I think we just double casket here instead. First hit Gran, forcing them to maybe cast another spell while they get the discount. Accumulate Wisdom. That's fine. So they are still dead on board. So yeah, Krang drawing a bunch of cards here while being a huge threat. Does a lot of work for the deck. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have double arsenal, only the one creature. So if it does get removed, we're in a bit of trouble, and nothing I actively want to sack to the reliquary. So this hand's far from perfect. Turn 2 arsenal, turn 3 arsenal, turn 4 guardian maybe. I'll still try it. The mana's good, so it doesn't take too many amazing top decks to make this hand functional. Opponent blue-red, Springleaf helps. So next turn we can at least deploy 2 artifacts. But yeah, if our opponent has an answer to the Guardian, I will need to find more creatures afterwards. Opponent on elementals. Probably the multicolor build that's trying to evoke a bunch of stuff, which will have access to Wistfulness. The double green mode can blow up an artifact. For now, play Arsenal. So they could evoke a Wistfulness already. This might be double black for Deceit. Yeah, and they can take my only creature. Alright, so we need a good top deck. One of our token makers, even a percussionist could be alright. And our opponent's gonna bounce their Deceit back to hand before it goes away. Yeah, I'll still hang on to Glass Casket, they should have some targets for it. Can pay the ward on the Roaming Throne if they play that out, can sack a Springleaf to the Reliquary. So opponent's gonna draw some cards instead. Gets rid of Ashling, and we drew Krang, which is great to have, but opponent's now probably gonna snipe it with Deceit. So that didn't quite pan out. Yeah, Springleaf does have its limitations if you don't have any creatures in play. And now Hardcast Wistfulness, also pretty good. Goes for Arsenal. And draw to discard. So I can no longer cast Krang. I can attempt to get rid of the Wistfulness. Don't know how useful that is. If they have another one, I guess they do not get the trigger again. Alright, fine. And then do I play the casket? I think I actually do. Because at least I'll be able to play Krang if they don't Deceit me again. And they might think we're just holding a land at this point. But they can cast Deceit for double blue, double black. It's gonna be another Wistfulness. I could still draw a land. Okay, so I do get to play Krang after all. And then probably no real point in warping Emissary. Does put it in exile where they cannot make me discard it at least. So I guess there's still some upside. In case they were trying to double Deceit me. Roaming Throne into Deceit, although they probably are happy to take another Krang at that point. But yeah, Thunderflock is also very deadly now, since they can build up a board and then bounce all my tokens and attack for lethal. So it just took us a bit too long to get going here, missing these token makers sooner. A Vibrance can deal 3. So take 6, and then next turn Thunderflock is likely lethal. So I would need to find more Duskrose Reliquaries. And a Flame Raider. Okay, so I'm like 90% sure our opponent is gonna Thunderflock me next turn. So the only way I survive is if I deal with the Wistfulness. And the only way we do that is by drawing a Reliquary, which we can find with another Krang. So, I guess we warp, play robots or robots and then warp to have a token that can maybe block on the off chance that they don't have the Sunderflock. Then Krang can attack. Hoping they trade, but I doubt it. They actually traded, so maybe they don't have a Sunderflock. Did not draw the answer we needed either way. So where does that leave me? Can cast another Ravenous Robots. Small chance they have Ashling's Command to deal 2 to all my creatures, so then I might want to have this left over. So then I'll just play a Springleaf. So right now, if they do Sunderflock me, I take 8 down to 1. If they Ashling's Command, do I commit another Ravenous Robots is a question, because I could cast it here. If they're running Winter Night Stories, I don't think they have Ashling's Command necessarily. So I'm just gonna go for it. Maximum tokens. And if they bounce my stuff, then it doesn't really matter. Three mana, 4 mana. That's more mana than you need to cast a Sunderflock. Ooh, the North Wind Avatar. That's unexpected. Now you have a 15-card sideboard in Standard, so they could have all sorts of cards to choose from. But they're limited to casting elementals right now. Vibrance can put me to 6. Or double Vibrance can deal with Krang. Pyroclasm, wow. Well, that's probably gonna be game over here. Can play double Emissary. And then Vibrance can do the honors here. Alright, GG's, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with what looks like a functional hand, missing a token maker perhaps to go wide and set up our arsenal a bit better. Facing Green Beavers, so Dimir mid-range or Sneak. For now, I think I still like Springleaf Drum. And then next turn we can maybe double spell Percussionist into a 2-drop. Boomerang Basics bounce their Beavers. Could be a Pixie deck as well. Yeah, as per Pixie. So they are known to have quite a few removal spells. But I don't know if I want to casket a Dream Beavers necessarily. So I think Percussionists play Arsenal's fine. And then if they remove it, at least we'll get an extra card out of it. Only if it dies, so I guess they could maybe exile it. Stormchaser's Talents could also exile the token, and that one won't be coming back. Another casket, so sure. Cast it, can still equip the arsenal. They could have the Kirin that can bounce their own stuff as well. But we're about to find out. And nowhere to run. Okay. So we'll still get a card in return, which we can most likely cast. And Guardian blocks the Dream Beavers. This is definitely a grindy matchup where something like Krang is going to be important to eventually draw a few more cards. Okay, this turn double Guardian. And then I could tap a Guardian to equip another. I think I would rather have them both on defense and save myself the damage here. Upside of equipping now is that next turn I could copy the arsenal if I don't have anything else going on. Alright, fine. Maybe switching which one's tapped makes more sense, because they're already incentivized to take out the untapped one. And they could have another nowhere to run to finish this off. Swift Savior. And that's fine. Can cast it for 0 mana thanks to Affinity. And the robots was a good pickup as well. So yeah, we get to make a few tokens here. And then I don't mind Casket, Exile Aang. Equip Arsenal. And this is a board where Arsenal can truly shine, since every single creature is a must-answer card. And our opponent scoops it up. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with what looks like keepable hands. I can still warp the Emissary without blue. Hopefully the Ravenous Robots can stick around for a while. Black-green. Yeah, I think I still try the robots, although there's a good chance it gets removed here. Make that Sultai colors. And the seat can make us discard. Probably going for Emissary or Arsenal. Takes Emissary. Alright, in that case, if I cast Arsenal, we get a token. So this gets another 2 mana discount. Not quite enough to cast it, but I can equip the Arsenal itself. Says our opponent on the Sultai Reanimator deck. Looks like it. And down goes the robots. Okay, so I can still play Guardian Equip. Cannot exile their enchantments, only creatures and artifacts. We are dealing a decent amount of damage at least. Wistfulness can blow up artifacts and enchantments. Takes out our Guardian. And another Ravenous Robots. Alright, at least there's no Bringer of the Last Gift in Graveyard, although they could maybe discard one with Chapter 3 to set up a Kivero. I think I still gotta go for this. And then casting this just to trigger robots is an option. I think I'll go for it. Hit for 6. If they did swap the graveyards, we would have gotten 2 creatures back as well. Opponent gets back a land. So if they Kivero on the seats, do they get to both bounce and discard? Which might be their play. Going for the robots. Thought they might go for the improvised arsenal instead, because now they seem pretty dead. Can just cast a reliquary, sacking a glass casket and clear a path. So yeah, we got to see this updated Jeskai artifacts deck in action. I'm glad I gave it another try after the preview event, where I just played a blue-red build instead, since the White Splash does give us a few more important answers early on for the various Badger Mold decks, and also being able to exile a large enchanted creature out of the mono-white aura deck is pretty important, and that's where dealing 2 or 3 damage with some of the red options may not be enough, so going to white at least solves that problem. Overall, I don't think the deck is better than, let's say, the Simulacrum Synthesizer builds of artifacts that have been going around for a while, since those tend to be a bit more consistent and have cards like United Battlefront that can potentially catch you back up if you get lucky. We don't quite have those powerful top decks, but we can still be off to a quick start with your Springleaf Drum and a whole bunch of token makers, and then Krang and the equipment are kind of our payoffs. So yeah, the deck definitely plays a bit differently than your other artifact builds, and at the end of the day, I don't think this is a huge improvement, but it's still fun to try out some other builds every now and then. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.